The Zone Coverage Podcast Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Minnesota Soccer Podcast. I am your host, David Naylor. I'm joined in the Zone Coverage Podcast Network studio by our usual people, Nick Hallett and Tom Schreier on the keyboard. Gentlemen, Sunday night, how y'all doing?
Nick, you know, we hand over the reins to David Naylor for the last two episodes. David's so good on the last one, we're like, we'll let him do it again. Nick Hallett decides to drop a football reference in our soccer podcast. I'm glad you weren't thrown off. You weren't even phased.
No, I'm in the zone, man. I'm ready for it.
Yeah, that's why I know David can handle the reins.
Yeah.
You just throw things at him.
Yeah, I can tell he's not shaking easily.
The horse that I'm riding won't get thrown off by mere loud noises or anything here. For going with the reins analogy, yeah. All right, Minnesota United FC played a game yesterday. It was ugly.
Some of them did.
Nick and I were saying before we got on air, this game was not televised, I guess, right? Not even on Fox.
Not on the
Plus.
main channels. You had to find.
It was on
Fox
Plus, wasn't it?
You had to find three streaming options. One was the Fox Sports Go app. I heard MLS, if you have like an MLS package or login,
you can get it.
You go through that, and then just
some shady streams,
pirate streams, so to speak.
Little pirate
which is
stream.
how I watched it.
I was gonna say, like,
Hallett.
I happened to find a stream of it on YouTube that was relatively high quality, and I enjoyed the New York Red Bulls broadcast of the game.
You dirty people. Yeah, so of games not to be televised, this seemed like, and to be fair, the Loons are missing players.
Well, and that's the first thing to touch on, right, is the international break, which we talk about. The Premier League was off this weekend, which the bigger leagues, the big European leagues, are off on international weekends because all of their players are gone, whereas in MLS, both Minnesota and New York were missing 4 or 5 people to it, which, like, I know New York, did not seem to cripple them majorly, considering their best offensive player, Bradley Wright Phillips, was still there. Whereas Minnesota, you take out both of the center backs, who are captains of their national teams, which I thought is kind of cool. Like, Calvo is captain of the Costa Rican national team, and Boxall is captain of the New Zealand national team, which that's a cool thing, but you're losing them for a regular season fixture against a difficult opponent away in New York City. Or not New York, New Jersey, sorry.
Do they play in the Meadowlands?
They play in Jersey. I know for sure. I don't know where.
Okay.
Their arena, Red Bull Arena, I believe is in New Jersey. No, I know is in New Jersey. I just don't know where. But that was referenced by their own broadcast several times.
Yeah.
Yeah, New Jersey. Kind of like New York.
Well, it was cool because apparently, that's where Mason Toy's from.
Yeah, and
so that was what was really cool.
He had family at the game. They had some Minnesota United signage up there, which was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says, I love their Wikipedia page, Red Bull Arena, New Jersey.
It's really got the New Jersey tag on it. That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's in Harrison, New Jersey, which I'll have to look up where that is. Kind of by like Newark. Yep.
Yeah, so that's like the same situation. The Nets aren't in New Jersey anymore, are they?
Yeah, no, Brooklyn.
They're in Brooklyn, and their arena is actually in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
But it's one of those, like, the
New York Islanders are in Brooklyn.
Yeah, the broadcasters joked on the actually New York Red Bulls that are in New Jersey. But anyway, as far as
there's 2 New York teams, right?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it New York FC? What's the other one?
NYCFC.
The Red Bulls and NYCFC.
So NYCFC plays in New York, and then the Red Bulls play in New Jersey? Okay.
Apparently.
I'll look.
I didn't know they played in New Jersey until now. Seems like a weird, but I don't know.
Newark, which is by the airport.
I don't pretend to know how the East Coast operates.
It's not far from Manhattan.
I enjoy that our stuff is far enough apart that we don't have to ask questions about which states things are in.
Right.
Like, yeah. I'm into that about the Midwest.
Like the soccer team played in Hudson.
Yeah. Well, it's like here's your fun MLS fact about stadium locations. Do you know what state Kansas City plays in?
Missouri.
Nope. Their arena is in Kansas. They are the only They are the only Kansas City team whose arena is on the Kansas side of the Kansas City border.
What? Boo.
Yep, I know that for sure.
That's
actually,
pretty weird.
Is it out of town like the Royals?
Yeah, it's on the way out of town, but exactly the opposite side of like the Royals and Chiefs
stay
complex.
Away from it. Yeah, stay away from
The
Royals.
Loons should just play their games like a couple of them in Wisconsin, a couple of them in Iowa,
To
and
be
then just
fair-
be Midwest United.
To be fair, I mean, yes, that's what they would be.
Well, no, it's you got to hit the Dakotas too, because the Dakotas will get mad if you don't go over there too. But
yeah, but if they're mad, what happens?
They combine into one Dakota and fight us.
well, that would be bad actually. They'd be
no.
much bigger.
The Dakotas are combining.
The single Dakota.
No, but I mean, to
They
be fair,
did this the last time we raised prices on Keystone.
Oh no.
in all seriousness, the Loons, though, on the border of Minneapolis-St. Paul, maybe that becomes a thing, right? Which one are they? Or wasn't that a controversy, too, whether they'd be by the farmer's market?
Yeah.
They're in St. Paul.
Yeah.
That new stadium is in St. Paul.
I know.
Like,
Very close to Minneapolis, but yes.
Well, but again, you compare that, like the Kansas City reference was, you compare that to the locations of the other ones. Like the Chiefs Stadium and the Royal Stadium are comfortably on the Missouri side of the border.
Missouri.
No.
Sir.
The city is Missouri. The country is Missouri. I lived in that state. I'm an authority on this.
What's happening right now? Honestly.
Whereas
This is your typical soccer bod.
you look at the Minnesota sports teams' arenas, right? Target Center, Target Field, and the Viking Stadium are all comfortably downtown Minneapolis.
Yeah.
The XL is downtown St. Paul.
Yeah.
Whereas like the United Arena it's in St. Paul, but it's much more in between than the
by
other two.
design, I
It's
think
literally
between the two.
it's literally
Midway.
in an area called Midway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, going back to 5 minutes ago, NYCFC plays in Yankee Stadium, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, they did. I thought they were moving, like eventually moving out. I can't remember. Maybe-
I believe they're in kind of the similar situation as Minnesota, where they're working on a soccer-specific stadium and are getting.
What about
process
LA?
done.
Do we know about LA? Is like one in Orange County and one's in downtown LA? I'll look this up. You guys talk
I
about
have
United.
no idea.
This is what the people want to
I
know.
cover the Minnesota team.
You need to know the opponents. They're scouting the
I
opponents.
don't. I don't need to. I need to know the opponents. I don't need to know where they're at.
What if we send you out
Hey,
there? You might
what-
you might go to Orange County and they're supposed to go to LA.
What neighborhood do most of the Galaxy players live in?
Tom just said he would fly us out to games in LA, so we shouldn't question it too
Actually,
much.
yeah.
That's
Nice.
recorded. That's on air.
Yeah.
No. So as far as the actual events on the soccer field, they weren't great for the Minnesota team.
Not great, Bob.
Less than ideal.
So if you missed the game, Minnesota United lost by a final score of 3-0, with 2 goals from Bradley Wright Phillips and 1 from Alex Muyl, which I don't know. How did you feel about the game overall as far as a 3-0 goes?
I thought that in a lot of ways there's 2 ways that I looked at it. In kind of the main way is that you could just kind of throw it in the trash bin because of all the absentees and it not be something that you have to like, well, we need to recover from this because we were playing well and now we got beat. Those absentees had a very strong impact on the game. And actually, my biggest takeaway from the game, and maybe you were going to reference it when we talk about my player ratings during the game, but I thought actually the biggest weakness was, despite having to replace the entire back line, the biggest weakness was actually having to replace Rasmus Schuler in midfield
With Colin Warner, who received a 1 in your player rating, was the player I thought was the worst comfortably in the entire game.
Absolutely.
So we were 100%
You don't-
on the same page on that.
Yeah,
Like,
you don't throw out 1s on player ratings very often, and I felt the need to.
you got 1 digit.
he was
Yeah, that's bad.
awful, man.
It was bad.
Because that was the thing, is the eyes are drawn to the defense because all 4 players in the defense changed. You had the 2 center backs out on international duty. You had
The 2 outside backs out injured.
the 2 outside back. Both out injured was.
Yep, Tyrone Mears out injured.
I knew Mears was, but I didn't actually know that Jerome was injured.
Jerome Tyson is out injured as well. So the entire back line was
Which that
replaced.
was a bummer. I know Jerome had the big Ironman streak where he hadn't missed a game since early last season, if not the season before that.
Yeah.
But that happens in soccer more often than not as you
Yeah.
rotate around.
And he's not super young. He's 30.
And so then you bring in the back line that we largely predicted last week and that you had coming in your article from during the week.
Yeah.
Of Brent Kallman and
Wyatt
Omsberg in the middle of defense, Carter Manley on the outside, and Mark Birch on the other outside back. So you've got your two of your draft pick rookies who have not appeared in an MLS game. Brent Kallman, longtime veteran, should be able to anchor things pretty well. And Mark Birch, who's just recently been returning from an injury and is looking to work himself back into match fitness. And then in front of them, you have Colin Warner, who's appeared in some games for the Loons, hasn't overly impressed, and looked way out of his depth in this game. And so, like, I expected the backline to be more problematic than it was, but Warner drew the eye to me.
Yeah, he the way that the analogy I would give is that he was like a sinkhole next to Ibsen, because Ibsen was who I thought was the best outfield player for the Loons on the day, and like having to play with the entire group, which played poorly, dragged on Ibsen because he was trying to create things, and no matter what he did, his teammates couldn't rise to his level. And what made it worse is he was having to do all of that alongside, basically carrying an ankle weight with him in the form of Colin Warner. Because Colin couldn't do anything to combine, couldn't do anything defensively. I mean, it's hard because it seems like a nice dude. I mean, you can just see it on his face. He seems like he's really nice.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's an exceptionally nice person, but I'm sorry, but he just can't compete at this level. And it's so evident, and it's been evident in the past. Think about all these different games where the Loons got blown out last year. He was a part of a lot of those, and he just. One of the things I said in the player ratings, which I thought was really telling, was so often the entire preseason, much of last year, the entire preseason, continually every week at practice, Adrian Heath references how they're trying to bring in new signings. Constantly brings that up, constantly talks about how he wants new players. And Colin Warner is the embodiment of why he is saying that. Because he had, in this situation, so many guys out on international duty, injuries, he has to put Colin Warner out there.
Because there wasn't another option in the squad. Like, there really wasn't, without bringing in one of the Cameroonian boys to start in their first MLS action.
Who
would have been playing out of position. Like, they've got nobody for that.
Well, I mean, Colin Martin exists, and Heath kind of seems to like him. So it's peculiar that he wouldn't play Colin. If they had a game in midweek, I bet Colin Martin would start in place of Warner. But yeah, and apparently I don't know enough about his son, who's a center mid on the team.
Yep.
But yeah, Adrian Heath's son is who I'm referencing. He must be more of an attacking player. At practice, I see him like taking kind of striking practice with all the attackers. So he must not be a natural center mid. So that's why he's not playing. I mean, apparently he'll never play. That's kind of seems to be the case. So that's kind of just an interesting side note. But man, no, I think what's on a positive note, which I know is weird for me to go that direction, but this with Maximiano, aka Luis Fernando, who apparently we're calling him Maximiano now only.
Wait,
I know.
What is this?
This is Luis Fernando.
He went Brazilian, and he's Brazilian, but he went like, I'm going to be one name Brazilian, like Ronaldinho, Ronaldo back in the day.
So now he's Maximiano, which is what the team's been saying, what media's been saying. That's
what's on the back of his jersey.
Nicolino. Can we do that?
Yeah. Yeah. If you saw me on the field, you'd say that. No, so this problem should... Heath keeps saying Maximiano is not fully healthy, but once he is, man, like this team would like. It's amazing, I think, how much better this team would look with that one change. Because I actually didn't think the defense played that badly.
I didn't either.
However, Colin Warner got a 1 in the player ratings, and Mark Birch got a 2, and it was those two that really dragged everyone down. And this team has shown thus far that maybe they are pretty good as a group, but they are not good enough to handle being weighted down by certain players. That kills them, and that's what this game showed. If this team is not good enough to carry itself if it's being held down, it needs all of it. It needs to have 11 pieces out there that can handle themselves. Yeah. And Colin Warner, as we've touched on heavily right now, can suffice to say cannot handle himself. And Mark Birch showed that he's just, unfortunately, I think it's just age has caught up to him.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you said in the player ratings is he looked out of his depth and just passed it. And that's like...
And inside info that a lot of people would maybe not be aware of is throughout his entire time since he got here and prior, he's dealt with a ton of lower body injuries, specifically like groin and stuff, and he just looks a step slower than everyone. So you add in the fact that he's older than most everyone, and then you add in that he's dealing with a ton of prior injuries.
Just baggage.
He doesn't have the speed. I just doesn't look like he has mobility necessary, which is unfortunate because you can tell he has an immense amount of quality in his game. But if your legs can't carry you in soccer, then that's
over because there's no position other than arguably goalkeeper, and even that where you can get away with not having legs. Like that's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
And like those were the two glaring things. Like you noted, the first goal was Birch did not close down on his man.
Soft.
Muyl got the shot off. It went in the far post. It was well targeted.
Did you hear how on the broadcast, the New York, because it was the New York broadcast, the color guy for the color commentator for the New York broadcast said that it was a terrible goalkeeping error that shot went in, which was outrageous.
I disagree.
And actually, I thought Lampson played by far his worst game of the season, but that was not his fault. That first goal, that was not his fault at all. That was a great shot.
Muyl picked that perfectly. Like I was impressed by that. Now, if we want to talk about Lampson's errors, I think you want to go straight to the second goal.
Yes.
Because that, like, Bradley Wright Phillips got a touch on that just ahead of Lampson, and I think Lampson could have gotten there had he moved more aggressively. It was a nice move from New York off of a free kick to cut it back to where Wright Phillips was. Cut it forward.
It was a smart set piece. Absolutely brilliant setup in that set piece.
But Lampson should have been quicker to get to it and probably could have punched out ahead of Wright Phillips.
Well, what was frustrating as I was watching the game, I was watching it with a buddy of mine who's played soccer at a high level, and we were watching. It was a bunch of times earlier. New York tried to go long, and it ended up going to Lampson, and he was so sluggish to come off his line and come out and grab the ball. And it's like, and these are like not dangerous plays, and it's like, dude, like you should be obviously jumping off your line and corralling that. And then, sure enough, like in the second half, I don't know, was it in the second half? But the second goal, nonetheless, there's an opportunity there where it's like if he'd have just been a little aggressive, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah,
and
5 minutes before halftime.
I don't know what he was doing. I don't understand.
And it's like, again, like credit to New York for having a good play design set up for that, because that was like that was clearly practiced and prepared for free kick in, cut back to Wright Phillips to get the final touch on it to throw the defense the wrong way.
No, and the way that Wright Phillips got his touch on it was classy as can be.
And that's both of Wright Phillips' goals were fantastic. The second one was even better. The second one was phenomenal.
Oh, yeah.
But, like, it was kind of the thing where, like, once that second goal went in, it was 5 minutes before halftime, and United should have given up a third goal before halftime. I don't know what the third goal right at the stroke of halftime was taken off for. That was a goal.
That was
absolutely in. I think New York almost hit the post on another one. I think Coleman did legitimately get fouled, but, like, essentially it was a goal. Like, and then they were just like absolutely under the buzzer. So the thing with it that I'd been saying right before that was, because I was watching both the Timberwolves game and the Minnesota United game, which were happening at the same time.
That's it. I was watching the Wild game too. I was watching all three.
Wild game started later,
and I had a college basketball game.
Yeah, no, there was so much. No, there was so much on that night.
And young, and young and the restless.
And this is like
you are young and restless.
Half an hour into the Minnesota United game is right when the Timberwolves were just getting their crap pushed in by the 76ers in the third quarter. So I'm like, hey guys, come watch the Minnesota United. The offense looks good going forward. They look like they can get a goal in this game. How did you feel about
that? I like that you're shifting the audience.
How did you feel about the offense in this game? Because we talked last game about what Miguel Ibarra has done stepping into this role. We talked about Nicholson and Finlay playing alongside him moving forward. They looked like they could score in this game.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I wasn't overly impressed, and that was actually what I took away as maybe what could be the most concerning is like, all right, well, the offense essentially stayed the same personnel, yet they didn't get on the board and didn't create a ton. That said, they did create a breakaway for Finlay, who had a shot blocked. Finlay hit the crossbar later on. There was a couple decent crosses into the box. But on the whole, they didn't really create that much. And part of me is like, dang, like that's so concerning because you guys were the same as the group that won the last two games. So that's scary that's what happened. But the more I think about it, the more it's honestly, that's what I'm saying. Like Minnesota United to be successful will have to be a unit, and they're very susceptible because their lack of top talent. That if any of those pieces are subpar, it really is going to hurt everything else. It's like it's fragile. Like they are built on dominoes, and if they have 11 dominoes, they're good. But if you take out one or two, they are wobbly. If that makes sense.
And it's a perfect segue. Are you worried about
that? Where podcast is sponsored by Domino's Pizza.
That would be great.
that we're
I
on
would love to
Domino's.
be- I would love to be-
one person leaves and we're screwed.
I would love to be eating pizza right now. Just saying, Domino's. If you're monitoring all podcasts with your advertising network,
They're monitoring up. They're like, that soccer one in Minnesota. We got.
But speaking of One Piece being not what it needs to be, are you worried about Christian Ramirez?
It's a good line of questioning. He should be worried about his position because if this keeps up, Heath's gonna yank him. Heath likes Dunlady a lot, and Mason Toye has shown that he can be impactful more than you'd think for a rookie, and he seems has a good amount of composure for a rookie. So. Both those guys have the speed that you can tell Heath wants from a lot of his attacking-minded players.
And it looks like it will fit better with what they're trying to do with Ibarra because they look like they want to move fast and move at speed on the counter.
The problem is Ibarra and Ramirez have proved successful together in the past, but I would no.
So with Ramirez, is he playing hurt though? Is that why he's less effective?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. I think he's got to be healed at this point. We haven't seen any other knocks, and that was weeks ago. So I think he's fully fit.
What do you see? What's wrong with his game? Like, what would indicate?
Well,
it's not
and that's a good question, and that's why it's like he might not necessarily be at fault. Is that, and I wrote about this in my piece for the site, is he is just the way his skills are. He's not athletically dominant. He is very technically sound and smart with his movement. But his movements are like the subtle plays like in the box, and they're only effective if the team is playing well and getting chances and bringing the ball up and possessing. And this was an example, and I hate to just always kind of bring it back to Warner, but it's just a good example of like that guy, Warner was killing keeping the ball and moving the ball up the field. And so when you don't do that, you kill Christian Ramirez's game. Because he can't create his own shot. He can't. He needs to be set up. And so without that, he's going to look like a really mediocre player. But he's not.
That's the thing about Ramirez is like he needs service. He needs to get the ball in favorable positions, and he needs his midfield to work with him. And that's like he's great when he can do that. But you look at the stats and you look at the shot chart. Ramirez had one shot off target in the game from outside the 18-yard box half an hour into the game. He recorded no other shooting opportunities because he's not getting the ball.
Well, and because even if he does, like, he can't create his own shot. He's like old Ray Allen on the Heat. He's only a spot-up shooter. That's all he can do. He can't do anything else. He can hit the threes if you give him the chance. But other than that, another analogy I would say is if Christian Ramirez went to like a top club like a Barcelona, he might be really good because those are teams who are so exceptional at creating chances. He's got potentially the ability. I'm making kind of a bold claim to underline my point, but he would have the quality potentially to bury a lot of their chances. But he needs to be set up.
He's on the U.S. team, right?
He's not necessarily. He's in consideration.
Okay, but he's probably in consideration because that's a well-developed team that probably just needs that role, right? I mean,
yes.
Okay.
That's why he would fit potentially with the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah.
Yes. So we'll see if this here's your meter on it. This is how you measure it. If Maximiano comes back in the midfield, or Rasmus is back and the team's kind of moving the ball a little bit, and the team's actually everyone but underneath Ramirez is functioning at a decent level, and he's still not producing and still not getting shots off or any chances created, then he's going to get yanked.
Yeah,
he's going to get yanked.
Because I think there's enough pressure behind him now, and Heath has shown no problem to play Toye, especially. Like, Toye was the one, like, we knew what Dunlady was. We knew that Dunlady's likely to come in behind Ramirez. We saw that for a lot of last year for Dunlady to excel. But Toye's been in the game and has been involved. Part of that's been because of injuries to Dunlady, but, like, he's been in and he's looked comfortable in the game. So that's like that. Not only is Dunlady behind you, but now you've got this rookie kid who you might want to see more from. And then, like, you saw Heath yesterday, which I thought was interesting, put Donladi and Toy on together.
Yes.
Which I think is an interesting development tactically moving forward because that was new.
Yeah, it is, and it's very much against Heath's nature to play two strikers. It's hard to know how much weight to put on that though because they were down by so much, and so he might have just been like
and they were
throwing his hands up.
They were
like,
only
whatever.
down by 2 when he brought them on though. Like that's
True.
not out of
True.
reach.
That is true. Which again though, it's like either way, like it was 2, but like they'd played so poorly at that point, it felt like a lot. So I loved that he did that because he hasn't shown a propensity to do that in the past. Kind of like be more like really throw all his chips in, which is like, dude, why not? It's more fun that way too. So it was good to see him do that. So hopefully, I don't know. It's really hard to picture him going away from a one-striker system at the onset of all the games. But if he's willing to maybe throw 2 on at times, I think that's good news.
Because that's like the subs when they came on were interesting because it's like he subbed off the Ibarra, Nicholson, Ramirez were the trio he subbed off. So he subs off most of the function of his offense from previous weeks, other than Ethan Finlay, to put on this functionally entirely new formation and system.
Yeah.
With Toy and with Donladi on with Frank Pangot making his debut in the midfield.
Yeah.
Which, like, that's the thing. It's like when you're making those kind of substitutions in the situation that it looked like he was in, maybe this is a throwaway game, but maybe he's like, this is a new look that might get us an opportunity to get us back within 1 goal.
Well,
because that was what the substitution smelled like with the timing and the score that they came in at.
Yeah, no, that was of course that was his intention. Absolutely.
I mean, it's also 2 younger players, so it's kind of interesting. Maybe this is a long term. He wants to get the time in this year because aren't these the last 2 top draft picks they've had?
Yeah.
So maybe it's something like kind of a long term play.
Yeah, potentially.
And it does
Absolutely.
give them a very different look because both Toy and Donladi have speed as a key part of their game.
And that's what I was saying. That's why Ramirez's position is potentially so much under threat because he'll never have that, ever.
He's a very different player to that.
Yeah, and so, it's really. I just don't think you're going to see him do 2 strikers except for if they're down this season.
Because we didn't think they would do that at all coming into this because he's so much proven to go with 1.
No, yeah, he never does that. So, and it would make sense potentially to like partner Ramirez with one of those 2. So that could be a play if they went. But I just don't. I don't know. I think, like I said, Ramirez is going to get the benefit of the doubt for a little bit longer. But if the team is functioning around him and he's still not creating, Donladi's going to get his chance.
And I did find it interesting, even if it means nothing, that he was willing to make this change to go to 2 strikers.
Yeah,
because that also should be viewed as somewhat of a threat to Ramirez.
It says what he thinks about Toy thus far.
Yeah, which is a massive credit to Toy.
Yes.
While we're talking about Toy, I like Carter Manley.
Yeah.
I have decided I like Carter Manley as a prospect. He's fun.
Yeah, no, I knew as soon as it kind of came clear that he was going to start, I knew he was going to be like one of the most fun guys to watch in that game because as an outside back, your ball touches are always going to be pretty heavy. And as a rookie, having to start like because of all this stuff going on, it was going to be interesting. And you couldn't help but have a microscope on him, and he performed really well. Like his passing was exceptional.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know that I think he maybe mishit 1, max 2 passes. He had one really like the epitome of a rookie play where he like just literally touched it to the other team. It was like, dude, what was that? Whoa, did you just have a seizure? Like, but like total understandable. You're a rookie in your first game. Other than that, his passing was superb. Like, caught the eye. Like, if you didn't know he was a rookie, you'd be like, dang, this is like a 5-year starter.
Yeah, his passing was good. He was extremely like involved defensively, had a lot of defensive events that he was involved in with tackles and recoveries.
Yes, those were the other plays that were like, wow, like well played, man.
Because he was in a lot of places at the right time, which is one of those things that with rookies, it's like not necessarily you don't expect them to have the physical skills needed and the technique needed, because that's one of those things you can work on, but positioning and being in the right place in a team setting is the thing you kind of almost expect to fail, the rookie mistake, right? And so much of the time, he was in the right place at the right time to deal with what needed to be dealt with.
He was in a game full of disappointment and maybe depression from a United perspective, he was a very clear bright spot you could take from this, because your starting right back prior to this is a 35-year-old, and so to have
Bingo.
the rookie come in and play this well is awesome.
I mean, it's what you should do in a game like this, right? Where you get outplayed, is just start to empty the bench and see what you got.
Which is, again, to what David mentioned just previous, that's what he did late on in the game, yeah.
Looking back at the draft, I remember that day there was a lot of praise for what United did. Do you think that's been merited? I know it's a really small sample size now.
Super small sample size, but to this point, absolutely. To this point, it looks fantastic.
Considering the fact that of their acquisitions on draft day, yesterday they played 4 of the 5.
Yeah.
Started 4 of the 5, I'm pretty sure.
Of the draft picks, you're saying?
Draft picks in Lamson.
I was going to say.
Lamson was acquired on draft day.
Yeah, 5 guys were acquired on draft day, 4 of them picks. Lamson the other in the trade. And yeah, like you said, 4 of them played.
4 of them played, and I don't think any of them have been that bad. Lamson has taken the starting job and has played mostly pretty well. This was his worst game.
Yeah, but he wasn't a train wreck.
He wasn't a train wreck at all. And Omsberg was fine. He was not.
Well, yeah, he was fine, but like I said in the player ratings, he was so minimally involved both defensively and on the ball that you really can't legitimately say how he played almost, because he just wasn't, just for what he had, not to his fault, but he just wasn't that involved.
And that's one of those things. It's you can look at that 2 ways. It's he wasn't everywhere having defensive impacts all over the field, making tackles, getting out there, doing stuff, but he also wasn't the center of huge mistakes, which is a thing we have criticized Francisco Calvo for before.
Right.
So that's there's 2 ways you can look at him not being very involved in the game. He wasn't a problem, but he also didn't do very much.
Yeah, I see what, I see what you're saying. I'm saying, literally, I think the flow of the game was just super, lucky and serendipitous, that the ball wasn't even in his vicinity to do anything with most of the time. So I don't know where I feel about Mr. Omsberg.
He existed.
Yeah. He wore his jersey.
Yep, he wore his jersey and was on the pitch for 90 minutes and didn't do anything stupid.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that.
Yeah.
But then you have Manley and Toy, both of whom I've been pretty impressed with in the minutes that they've had.
Yep.
And that's people were impressed with that on draft day, like you said. I think that's already bearing out, even just 4 games into the season, which is exactly what you want to see from that kind of result, because it's not usual that you see these guys producing that fast, I think.
Well, I think it is, as of this point, all of that is accurate statements, but it's
early. It's so
tiny
early
sample size.
So New York, we kind of have a wash there. When the next time we're likely to see this exact defensive lineup is the next international break, right? Yep. I can't imagine this is going to get much run unless it has to get run.
For sure not.
What do you see as the international crew returns? I think we probably return to almost exactly the same lineup as you have. Do you think Carter Manley starts next week because of the injury to Ty Mears?
It sounds like it's a decent injury, so that seems pretty likely. And I think that's based on, like I said, from what we saw from his performance, Heath will have a few points, be you played well, kid, and do this and do that a little differently. And I don't see why he wouldn't play again. But you would feel a lot better having Tyson on the other side and Calvo and Boxall back in there, and then someone else to partner Ibsen, who man, he can play. He is a good man. I thought he played well, especially considering what he had to deal with. I'm really excited for Maximiano to play.
Ibsen is growing on me.
He's good.
I was not as much of a fan of his game last year, watching just as a fan. He's so annoying in all the best ways for somebody that's on the team that you're covering and cheering for and writing about.
Yeah.
He's just an annoying little dude.
Yeah,
he's the dude I would hate the most if I was playing Minnesota United, because he just does. He's on the ground all the time. He's getting your players mad. He's getting people to kick at him.
Yeah.
Provoking people into getting yellow cards on him. He's always crying about stuff.
Yeah.
But he creates opportunities in that way.
Yeah.
In addition to being a pretty good player on the pitch, he's just so obnoxious to play against, and it's cool.
Yeah. No, if you have to play against the Warriors, you hate Draymond Green. But if you're a Warriors fan, you love Draymond Green.
You know who Ibsen reminds me of?
Draymond Green?
No. JJ Barea.
Oh, what?
He reminds me of JJ Barea on the Timberwolves, who I have long been on record of hating, but I understand his game. Right?
I thought immediately JJ Redick, which I was like, maybe, but
I think that's
no, just because you said JJ. But yeah, I can see. I mean, I get what you're saying.
He just does little stuff.
Yeah.
He does little stuff that most people don't notice, and then he gets under people's skin. Right?
Yeah,
like,
I think that's an.
I think
yeah,
Draymond
that's
is.
an
I think
average
Draymond is much more loud with his stuff.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so we move forward, and next weekend on Saturday at TCF Bank Stadium, Minnesota United will welcome their always forever brothers in expansion in Atlanta United.
Is that next week already?
That is next week.
That's a big
That
game.
is Saturday. That's a big game. Because Atlanta hasn't been.
Where is that at?
It's here. We'll be there.
That'll be a fun
Nick and
game
I will
to
be
watch. That'll be fun.
Nick, please cover this game for us.
Wait,
I don't know, where is it? No, who are they playing?
And Atlanta, I don't
I'm
think
there
this-
when it counts. I know when it matters. I knew David would tell me.
So this game is interesting only because it's kind of like last year. It's early in the season, right? Last year was the first game United played at home.
Yeah.
Do you think they still have momentum going in, given that if you're a fan of the team right now, like a hardcore fan, you know why they lost to New York and all
Yeah.
that. I mean, do you feel like it's going to be a lot of build up still, even with the loss to New York?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think they would still be able to, as a team, hold on to that confidence. Less than momentum,
And they
but more
have something to
confidence.
prove, right? I mean, they don't want another 6-1 result
Well, but the last time they played Atlanta, they beat them
in the big old stadium, right?
Yeah.
The football stadium. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was late last year, and they took them down. So they should have confidence because their starting unit is still on a 2-game winning streak, air quotes. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And the last time they played them, they beat them, and that was when they were good. You know, they were still good. You know what I mean?
Atlanta was in contention.
They
at
made
that
it to the
point?
postseason.
Yeah.
So, you know, and So for those reasons, yeah, United should feel, and they're playing at home again. You know, so United should feel good.
Yeah, and Atlanta was off this weekend. They did not play a game, and they will come into next weekend 2-1. They got stomped in their opener by Houston, which was a surprise.
Yeah, that was a weird result.
And then have come back and now won 3-1 against DC United and 4-1 against Vancouver. So
See, that's much more the Atlanta
they've
United
warmed
I would've
themselves up.
expected.
Joseph Martinez had a hat trick in their win over Vancouver.
Man, even more so now if Maximiano can play, that would be huge.
That would be huge
massive.
because that's been Atlanta's thing is they score. They will get goals all the time.
I would just call it right now. If Colin Warner starts, if you see him on the starting lineup,
That's game.
United will lose.
Yeah, and I cannot find myself to disagree with that much. It's hard to tell with Atlanta because they have an even smaller sample size than Minnesota.
I don't know why I said that. I mean, obviously Schiller's going to play. I don't know. Even know why I
So
said that.
this kicks off kind of a rough stretch, right? I mean, you go in Portland, in Seattle.
Yeah, Portland's been really bad.
Really?
Portland's
Even in
been
Portland?
really bad.
Yeah.
That's crazy because I know they're notoriously tough.
Yeah.
It's a tough place to go. They got a draw.
I mean, in a lot of ways, though, it's a tough stretch.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's so Seattle and that Houston team. Yeah.
Yeah,
After
so
that, yeah.
so Portland got a draw in Dallas last week. I know they came back late to scrape that draw, but they have lost their opening 2 games. They lost to New York worse than we did, and then they'll play Chicago next week. So they've got 2 shared opponents with Minnesota already. So there's gonna be a pretty decent amount to compare between the 2 teams. Both teams got smacked by New York. We'll see how Portland does against Chicago. But I know Portland's come in looking weaker than they have in many previous seasons, which is interesting. Like typically, it's like looking at playing the Galaxy last year, right? The Galaxy had never been bad, basically since their inception until last season, and then they were one of the teams in MLS that were worse than Minnesota last year. They were very, very bad. So it's one of those sticker shock type thing. Like you go to Seattle, you go to Portland, you expect to lose those games. in those like fortresses of soccer. But those teams might not be as good this year.
Yeah.
How big is getting a win at home though? Against the expansion franchise, all that stuff.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking though, like, yeah, if they beat Atlanta, like, man, how much momentum they'd have then, and how confident they'd feel with that group. That if the starters are fully back and can play and win that game, that would be massive. And thinking of how they might play that game, actually, I haven't watched Atlanta this season, but there's a decent chance Ramirez gets benched in the Atlanta game because it might make a ton of sense to try to counter Atlanta.
It's a very counterattack.
You'd imagine with Miguel Almiron and Barco and Nagbe and Joseph Martinez that they're going to be able to possess the ball a lot and be in United's defensive half a lot. So it would make a lot of sense to play Dunlawdy and try to counter. So, yeah, Ramirez might not play.
What are the odds he pulls the trigger there?
It depends on what he sees from the game film from Atlanta. But if he sees, it'll also, that's another fun thing though, is from the starting lineup immediately. If you see that, that's their tactic. They're gonna try to counter him. I would say my percent right now would be 50-50.
Yeah, and I think that's going
to
to probably become clear in training this week.
Especially, like we said, with Ramirez not really staking a claim that he's playing super great right now. All the more reason you're comfortable pulling the trigger and playing Dunlawdy. So.
Yep, for sure. So I'm just doing some quick looking through the international scores since there are some dudes out on the travels this week. Costa Rica, Francisco Calvo's Costa Rica, had a 1-0 win against Scotland, in which Calvo played, came off the bench and replaced Brian Oviedo. Did what he did. I'm trying to remember what New Zealand
He came off
with.
the bench, and didn't you say he captained the team?
I believe you. So then maybe I'm reading this wrong. I thought he captained the team. I know that Boxall captained New Zealand for sure.
Okay.
And New Zealand lost in a friendly 1-0 to Canada. And yep, that happened.
Traditional soccer powerhouse.
Sounds really exciting, right? Canada and New Zealand.
Well, shouldn't Canada be good though? Aren't like Toronto and Vancouver some of the biggest teams?
How many Canadian players do they employ?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I guess. Oops.
Yeah.
The question is, when does the? Yeah, I'm pretty certain the last few internationals are like early this week, so those guys will be.
Yeah, so they'll have another game early this week, so those guys probably won't be at training.
Gosh, if any of those guys get injured though in those games, that would be a killer.
That would be pretty disastrous. And then Finland had a 0-0 draw with Macedonia, in which Rasmus Schuler started and played and did nothing. Probably did something, but nothing.
I was going to say, doesn't sound like anyone
he
did
just
anything.
stood in place. He's like, nah, I'm not going to run.
He Colin Warnered it.
Cannot confirm that I watched this game. I did not watch Finland Macedonia. Sorry, I haven't.
Wow.
I haven't done my legwork on this. I apologize.
We're gonna have to fine you for that.
Yep, that's so that.
We'll send you to Macedonia.
But the big headliner for tomorrow, if you're not doing anything at 11 tomorrow morning, you can watch Finland Malta. And get your Rasmus Schuler on in some Finland-Malta hot international friendly action. So it's those guys. I would anticipate most of them will come back Wednesday or Thursday, and hopefully that's
good to know though. Yeah, it's good to know the schedule there.
As most of them have said, and then Costa Rica, Francisco Calvo's Costa Rica have a friendly against Tunisia on Tuesday. I know nothing about the Tunisian national team either.
There's nothing to know.
And New Zealand, let's see, Boxall. Looks like Boxall is done. New Zealand have no more friendlies to play. So Boxall will be back with the team soon.
We go.
So keep your fingers crossed for good results and no injuries for Costa Rica and Finland moving forward this week. What else you got on, Nick? What did you see? What have we forgotten to talk about?
I think the importance of Schuler and anyone whoever's partnering Ibsen is just such a clear matter of huge importance.
And I remember when Maximiano signed, I wrote the piece about his signing and did a little bit of research about him. And I didn't want to bank on him being as important as he looks like he might be to the future and results of this team. Just because, again, he's not a known quantity. At this point, we've seen him play a little bit in Brazil and a little bit in the Slovakian second division.
But that's the thing. Like when you compare him, and I hate to just keep piling
hamming on Colin Warner,
but it's a fact. Like he, Fernando Maximiano, whatever you want to call him, he played in Brazil's top division, and if he played there, and if Fluminense only wanted to loan him, not sell him outright, means that you have interest in keeping him. Mm-hmm. I guarantee his quality is good enough. Like guarantee. Yeah. So I know he'll be good, like to a certain degree. I don't know how good, but he will be good enough to play in this team. It's just a matter of getting him on the field.
But then the question goes back to then his health and the ACL injury.
Absolutely.
Because from what we found, the ACL was done in June of last year is when the injury happened. And that's typically an injury that takes 8 or 9 months to come back from. And so we're looking at that timeline. We don't have real specifics, but it's been 9 months since last June. So you'd think that he's nearing the tail end of that recovery process, and the more we know, the sooner we see him in training, the sooner we see him running, kicking, passing, doing whatever needs to be done, the better.
Yes.
But it's hard to feel like that kind of new player who so little is known about is as integral to this team's success as it feels like he might be. And I said that at the signing, and now that we've seen games, it feels even more like that.
And it's scary to think, what if Ibsen or Rasmus got hurt? And even if you have Maximiano available, like that's scary. That's scary that like Colin Warner and Colin Martin are like, because they can't. If Warner plays this poorly and Martin's not even playing, what does that say about Martin? And so that's what I'm just saying. Like, wow, like boy, do they look weak in the center midfield. Their depth. Heath is the guy who trumpeted the most that they need more players, and it's the center. It's right there in the center of the park where they need it, and it's scary to think like if injuries were to happen, where this team would be, because they're showing that they can be competitive. Maybe now's a good time to reference that the rumored of
that's exactly what
signing.
That's exactly what I was gonna hit is the new signing that they are potentially likely to have, which is Colombian footballer Darwin Quintero, who currently plays for America in Mexico, the club, not the country or the continent. And from the Athletics, Jeff Reuter, MLS sources indicated to him that Darwin Quintero is set to be announced by Minnesota United as soon as this week. Sides have agreed to terms, and ITC is the final step. So this week could see the announcement of the first designated player in Minnesota United history. Is an attacking forward what they need? An attacking midfielder and or forward what they need?
Based on what I just said, no. And what I've said all last year on the podcast was this team needs a defensive midfielder so bad, or a really strong center mid. And Maximiano could definitely be that. So maybe they have filled that. But as I pointed out, the depth is still very much a concern. But after that, kind of, yeah. I mean, Molino's out for the year, and this guy could be replacing Molino. So therefore, you could argue he very much is in need. But when you have guys like Ibarra and Pangop and Nicholson who could potentially play that attacking midfield role anyway, it does feel a bit like a luxury signing.
Because that's the thing is, like, looking at the team, it's like we looked at the stuff that didn't change this week, and that was the attacking midfield and the front of the team, right? Because if we sign Quintero, who like he's got a pretty good record, he's played in Mexico since 2009, he scored 67 goals in 8 seasons in almost 300 appearances in Liga MX. Who does he come in for? Like,
he comes in for Miguel.
He's coming in for Miguel, which
sure.
That just sucks for Miguel.
Yeah.
Like,
but I mean, Miguel did not play that well, actually. And again, like I said, it's tough to grade everyone on last night's performance because of other factors. But Miguel that might be what Miguel is at this point. He might be. Who did they play 2 weeks ago?
Orlando.
Miguel might be exactly that. He might be every other game type of guy, which might not be good enough. He might be the Orlando Miguel at times, and he might be the New York Red Bulls Miguel at times. So, and that's why you bring in someone who's not that.
Or he
Someone
might
who's
be
consistent.
or he might be the guy that you want to bring in off the bench, which is
Yeah.
what his role was in the game that Molino got hurt, which was the Orlando game. I missed.
And Miguel can play out wide, so he's not killed if Dawkins. What's his name?
Quintero, Darwin Quintero.
Darwin. If Darwin comes in, that doesn't necessarily absolutely murder Miguel's playing time because potentially Miguel can go out wide as well. So there's that.
So that's based on the timing of that, I think it'll be interesting to see. You wouldn't expect with the timing as far as it continues to be reported that Quintero would appear this week, especially because I'm sure there will be paperwork to be done with him, get his paperwork, green card, what have you, for him to appear.
I imagine maybe it's a little easier though, like Pangop and Bertrand, like both those Cameroonians were coming from Africa, so it was like extra difficult because the paperwork there, from what I was hearing, is a little different. I imagine Mexico to America, that process is a bit more streamlined at this point.
I will resist the urge to make political commentary here.
Yeah, I could tell. I could see it in your face. But I think his move would happen. It would go quicker.
There's also the side.
But I don't think he'll play this week.
I wouldn't think he would play this week, but it seems like the stuff could be done this week. We could see Quintero holding a Minnesota United jersey this week, potentially in the States this week. And that would, at minimum, even if it's not exactly what they need, it's the kind of statement of intent that some people have asked for, that many people asked for before the start of the season, in that we are going out signing an experienced player who's gotten goals in a league that's quality is roughly equivalent to that of MLS, who's lots of experience, can fit into a system, and is someone that we're going to go out and splash the cash on ahead of other teams that might want him just as much as we do.
Yeah.
So it's, at minimum, we're signing a designated player. We're actually doing it. We're going in.
And what I think you could, as much as the fuss of we've maybe even made or fans have made about the lack of signings, if this happens and Quintero comes in, then like with the emergence of Toy and Dunladi, and with the success of Nicholson and Finley out wide, and then you have Ibarra and Pangop backing them up, and then the arguably newfound success of the starting back line, and then having Shuttleworth, who started all the games last year, and Lampson here now too, you could make the argument that really the only major hole is the center of midfield, which is pretty good considering where they were at last year, and considering everyone's upset, and even Heath's upset they haven't made signings. If he comes in, you could feel pretty good about the roster all of a sudden, which is pretty weird to
And they've
say.
shown the ability that they can go out and get wins against lesser teams in MLS already this season.
Yeah.
With what they've got.
Yeah.
So it's, what we're saying is, we came out of a week where they got stomped thoroughly by a better team with a roster that is not their full roster. But I think that the general vibe coming out of this is that there's plenty of reason for optimism even moving forward into games against the likes of Atlanta and Portland. They're not necessarily games that you expect to go out and get beat 6-1 like Atlanta did last year. The expectations might be higher and the optimism might be higher, which is not a place that this team was in last year.
Yeah. As Mr. Coldwater, it pains me to agree with that, but I would say that is truth.
Because that's the point that this discussion got to, and you couldn't stop it, Mr. Coldwater.
Exactly. Exactly.
And with that said, it seems like we've hit about all of our major talking points for the week. So the next time we record a podcast, it will be the month of April.
Wow.
That's pretty wild.
All right.
Well,
There's two things we would be remiss to not just at least say out loud on the show real quick.
number one.
Number one, which is some real just fun Minnesota soccer news. Andy Greeter reported that Tottenham and AC Milan will play an International Champions Cup game at US Bank Stadium. Obviously, a very similar fixture happened summertime last year with Chelsea and AC Milan. So super exciting that'll happen again at US Bank Stadium, and that was heavily attended.
I actually had missed that, and I'm now really excited and sad for my wallet because that is my team, and I have to go watch.
You should be out of the be through the roof. That's
Yeah.
going to be so sick for you, man.
I had not heard that yet, so that's really exciting.
Yes. So that's
Cool.
awesome.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating news and awesome to hear. And then secondly, just the fact that Zlatan Ibrahimovic joined the LA Galaxy. Finally, it had been rumored for a long time, but he's here.
Could
in the
make
MLS.
his debut in the LA Derby.
Yes.
That is what's been rumored in the LA Galaxy LAFC game. That's when he could
possible.
make his Galaxy debut.
But nonetheless, what's really exciting is United plays Galaxy at home, so Minnesota fans could get to see Ibrahimovic play live, which is
Awesome. He is
invaluable.
he is one of a kind.
Yes.
And if you don't follow Zlatan Ibrahimovic on Twitter, you are missing out because he is a wonderful, unique personality who thinks
You don't even need to follow him on Twitter to know that. Like, he just exudes it in everything he does.
everything he does, every quote he makes to media, everything about Zlatan is Zlatan.
Absolutely. My favorite was whenever like a big player comes in a new city, it's like, welcome this player, welcome to our city. And what Zlatan said was, L.A.
Welcome to Zlatan.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
That's what he does.
That's
Everywhere he
amazing.
goes, everything he does is Zlatan.
That's
He's played in
amazing.
Paris, in Manchester, in Germany, in Italy,
God.
everywhere. Everything is Zlatan. All of it is Zlatan. Nothing is above Zlatan.
Yeah.
That is his personality. That is his mojo. That's what he does, and it's great to have that in MLS.
The lion doesn't concern. The lion isn't concerned with the thoughts of sheep.
Wow.
That's some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth.
That's
Zlatan
amazing.
Ibrahimovic. He is amazing. If you aren't aware of him yet,
That's
you
So,
should
amazing.
so
check
those
him
are
out.
those are two tidbits.
And
that
the third
should be noted.
league-wide tidbit, it was announced the MLS All-Star Game opponent this year will be Juventus, which is a cool thing. It'd be cool to see.
Ricardo will be excited.
Ricardo will be excited. Shout out to Ricardo Patesi, our friend, writer
Who kind of covers the Wolves but got fed up with Tibbs.
writer, friend, cover of the Timberwolves, Italian native.
Writes in
and,
Italian. Do you know this? There's an Italian.
Yeah, you
guy?
guys told me about
yeah.
this once. It was fascinating, actually. Yeah.
And journalist at Gazzetta dello Sport. So he's a good dude. So those are the three MLS wide tidbits, and then zone coverage wide tidbits, because we would be remiss to not plug events where you can go and drink beer with our people and myself, which we have not one but two of coming up this week. On Friday evening,
Mackenzie.
at Mackenzie Pub in downtown Minneapolis, right by the Orpheum Theater on Hennepin and 9th Street. You can join myself and the co-hosts of the podcast Wolves Wired and Land of 10,000 Takes, and Tom Schreier, I guess,
Oh, boo. That ripped.
Boo that guy.
at Mackenzie to watch the Minnesota Timberwolves
So
play
Patrick Fenelon and Maggie.
Patrick Fenelon and Maggie Schultz. To watch the Minnesota Timberwolves play the Dallas Mavericks. You can go and have Wolves trivia and drink beer and listen to a podcast be recorded live and watch Tom probably get really more drunk than he should be.
Yep.
In public, because that is Tom Schreier.
Yep.
And on Saturday, if basketball's not your thing, that's fine. Go watch hockey.
Yep, you can watch. So that's at Tin Whiskers in St. Paul. That's with Giles Farrell, Ben Remington, Giles, and the goalie. It'll be a fun time. Those guys are great.
Nice.
But make sure they have at least one TV on the Minnesota United game, which will be happening at
they
the
will.
same
Giles
time
is a
as
soccer
the World
guy.
game.
Yeah, Giles is a soccer man.
So
It's an interesting way you hold your phone there, Nicholas.
Good thing we're a podcast.
good thing we're not. We
No one
haven't
can see that.
We haven't transitioned to video yet. What's the pivoted to video? We've not pivoted
Yeah,
to
we've
video
not
yet.
pivoted.
I think if we ever pivot to video, people will really enjoy my outfits. What is up with this guy?
I'm sitting here properly dressed, and you two both just came from playing sports.
Scrubbing.
Major scrub mode.
Scrubbing, baby.
So
I don't know what you guys are talking about. I just came from a Tinder date.
Oh, yeah.
You guys, those of you listening to this podcast should be glad that podcasts do not come with smell. And we shall hope that technology doesn't come for another few years yet, because
Yeah, I don't
we
see
don't
that
need that.
happening.
We don't need that in our lives.
What does this podcast smell like, I wonder?
Not great. And with that, that's a real good place to be done with this episode of Minnesota Soccer Weekly. So, the Minnesota Soccer Podcast. The Minnesota Soccer Podcast on the Zone Coverage Podcast Network. I am David Naylor at Prof. Cedar on Twitter. Nick Hallett is at Prince Hallett on Twitter. Tom Schreier is at T Schreier3 on Twitter. With that, have a good week. Go Loons.